time makes waves. From far away, information highway. You're a mirage that my mind will cling to. Though you're far away, we can make a way. Makes waves.
Good to go, man. How are you doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Generation Orange. My name is Edson Ochoa, and we have our co-host here, Sean Ringrose.
New style, new setup. Want to see how this goes?
Yeah, pretty much. So be sure, like I said, be sure to go ahead and leave a like down there in the video. Be sure to share it with all of your friends. And subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Also, I did add a link down there in the description if you guys are want to tip us using Stream Elements. You know, any little bit helps. $1, $2, $3. You know, we could really greatly appreciate it. It will help us in the long term. You know, to allow us to give you all more content, better content, more importantly. In our coverage of not just the Dynamo and the Dash, but also with RGVFC. We have a great program tonight. Actually, we'll have Eddie Robinson will be coming in. We'll be calling in a little bit. We'll talk about this whole crap show that was the SKC versus our Houston Dynamo match. We'll talk more about referees. We'll talk about the Dash, and we'll talk. There's a lot more stuff. We're also going to have Julio Llerena on, who is a Houston Dynamo season ticket rep. I'm sure you guys have a couple of questions or have voiced your concerns in social media about how the Dynamo, how the organization is that have happened. And so be sure to, if you guys have any questions, be sure to leave them down there on the in the YouTube chat. Plus, we'll be covering more about what happened between the Houston Dash and the Utah Royals. And we'll go into a little bit of RGV Express, what happened this week against Las Vegas Lights. So don't go away. We're barely starting right now. So Sean, how's it been, man?
I'm still not over it. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, you know, I said it on Twitter. If this was isolated, if this hadn't been on the heels of the last home match having a referee that showed clear bias favoring one team over another, immediately preceding this match at home. Now, granted, we did have the Portland match in between, and I felt like the Portland match, for all intents and purposes, was officiated reasonably well. But I definitely do not believe this match was officiated on, fairly. I've seen some people on Twitter say that, Dynamo fans say that, well, it shouldn't matter. You can't play. You never know what type of ref you're going to get. And that's kind of a problem that mentality even exists, because the rules are the rules. And Weeby brought this up last week, that the rules as written for MLS are different than the rules that are as written for FIFA. FIFA's rules tend to be a lot more, a lot less ambiguous. By that, I mean that they tend not to have a lot of wiggle room in it for interpretation from the refs. They're very specific in terms of what constitutes a handball, what constitutes a red card serious offense, what constitutes a yellow card serious offense, etc., etc. And I say this having actually gone through the referee training. Oddly enough, I went through and actually took the referee test. You have to do that if you want to get your USSF coaching certification. And I went through because I was interested in looking at possibly getting my F certification. And so, as I was going through that, I learned a few things, and there were a few things that I was like, oh, well, that's different than what I had been taught. But where I really started to notice some interest, got some interest, for myself as I was going through this, is that there's a lot of parts in there that are, like I said, and Weeby pointed this out, the rules are extremely ambiguous. They're extremely open to interpretation. MLS, for whatever reason, has decided that it's better not to have a strict set of rules and to be more open in terms of how referees can officiate. And so what you end up with is what we have right now, which is you have no clue week to week, ref to ref, what type of officiating you're going to get. You don't know whether you're going to have a strict ref that's going to be calling things really tight to the letter. You don't know if you're going to have a loose ref that, he's kind of like, these are players, I'm going to let them play. And what that ends up with, if you think about it from a player perspective, is because they don't ever know what to expect. They don't have a baseline on how to play. They can't play to, how the officials are going to officiate the game. And so you end up with these instances where you have teams like SKC, regardless of what their fans may think, they're A, one of the dirtiest and most physical teams, and B, they are one of the most flopping teams I've ever seen. When you combine those two things, it's going to frustrate the opponent. Okay, that's kind of their intent to do that. But on the flip side of that, if the officials aren't calling that, and the officials aren't maintaining control of what they're doing, they're going to be empowered, SKC players specifically, to embellish harder, to dive farther, to make more of an act out of a foul. And so we saw that in the very first foul that was the yellow card, or not the first foul, but the yellow card in the 3rd minute that was given or shown to Kyoto for a challenge that absolutely wasn't even a challenge. Not only that, but he was not the cause of the player hurting himself. That was the pitch. Not only that, but it was the player, it was actually Gerso Fernandez, who actually, not only did he hurt himself, but he actually committed the foul. But yet, Kyoto was shown the yellow. Again, this is coming, and this is in the 3rd minute of a match. This is coming off the heels of the previous Dynamo home match, where the Dynamo, rightly so, felt like the official was very favorable towards Philadelphia, and even Philly players and the Philly coach were appalled at how bad the officiating was. And so when you combine all of that and you think about it from a player perspective, you're on the pitch, you have no recourse whatsoever. You're not allowed to complain. That's considered dissent. You're not allowed to lash out. That's considered perhaps retaliation, which
aggression
or retaliation.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it may be. And so at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, you just end up with this. You know, if a player is going to be frustrated, he's going to act out. He has no other alternative when the referees are not stepping in to provide him a platform and to say, look, we actually understand that you're pissed off because of what's happened. We're going to be judicious in how we officiate. This referee had no intent to be judicious. The calls that he would tend to make, especially after the first half, here's where I got really frustrated. After the first half, after he had spoken with Wilmer in the tunnel, and after the official, whomever it may have been, I don't think it might have been Penso, it might have been the fourth official, but whichever official it was, Wilmer went on record to say that that official spoke to him in a manner that you shouldn't speak to anybody.
Yeah.
And my problem here is when you do that as an official, you have lost all credibility as a professional. And if that is how professional referee organization is going to act, when coaches question their calls and, you know, coaches demand an explanation for bad calls, then we are in a very bad place when it comes to officiating. And I don't think there's a single fan out there that wants to see his coach be belittled and under the aggression of a referee who has already yelled at him for other things to sit there and clearly verbally assault him. Mm-hmm. And if I'm Wilmer and if I'm the Dynamo, I file assault charges, whether they like it or not, even though he didn't physically put his hands on him, because Pro needs to investigate that. And until that is investigated, that is a problem. Because now you've empowered whomever it was, whether it was Penso or not, I don't know because I didn't get to ask the question. But whomever it was from a referee standpoint, you've empowered them to do that again. You've empowered them to do that to a player. You've empowered them to do that to a coach. Anytime a referee gets away with, and no matter what the disciplinary process may be, no matter whether they face discipline or not for what took place, we as fans know what really took place. And we sit there, but if they're not held to an accountability standard, they're empowered to continue this reign of terror, if you will. And unfortunately, the Dynamo have been on the receiving end. Now, I'll say this. There may be good reason for that. One, you had Boney with the captain's armband. Boney's not exactly the most quiet player on the pitch. He is very vocal. He is very demonstrative. Some referees, they tend to be triggered by those types of players. And what I mean by triggered is they tend to, most of the time, demonstratively and overzealously call fouls in favor of the other team when that happens. And I think that played into it a little bit, whether he'll admit it and whether Pro will admit it or not. My problem is that I sit here and I look at all of these things kind of in relation to each other. And I say, is there anything that Dynamo could have done different that would have prevented Saturday's catastrophe from taking place? The answer is no. You had Elise and he got out there. So not only does Melia not get a card for this, not only does Melia not get a reprimand for this, and VAR has video of this, so they could have potentially said, hey, that may actually be considered a red card offense because it is considered it may not be endangering the safety, but he's clearly lashing out at a player. He's clearly instigating.
I mean, if they give a red card to Darwin Saran for putting it
and the red card to Elise is a similar type of red card where he was turning around to find out what the hell happened because he was pushed. And he got the red card because his arm happened to connect with his face.
Yeah, and then he was like, oh my God.
Now, to be fair, if Elise was going to connect with his face, do you really think at that point in the match when he was pissed off, he would have just casually, lightly brushed his cheek? Oh, hell no. Melia's ass would have been on the floor because he would have floored him completely 100% without a doubt. Elise, like Kyoto, can be hot-headed when things are as frustrating as they were on Saturday. And, as a fan, it's hard for me to watch that. As a cover guy, as a media guy, it's even harder for me to watch that. Because I have a vested interest in seeing the league succeed. I have a vested interest in seeing the league quality go up. And what I saw on Saturday and what I saw last week on Wednesday tells me that we have a very, very long way to go until we can be considered one of the best leagues in the world. Right now, our player talent pool is higher than it's ever been. Our referee talent pool is lower than it's probably ever been. We will discuss that with Eddie here in a little while. I've got questions lined up for him tied to that. But it's frustrating as a fan, and I think there are plenty of people out there who would not only agree with me, but who would, assess the situation probably even harsher than I do. I believe it's rectifiable, but I also think that Wilmer is right in saying their hands are tied. Coach's hands are tied. Look at Petke. When he speaks out, what does he get? Fines. He's not been suspended yet, but I guarantee you it's coming the next time he lashes out. Players can't say anything about the league or about the referees, or they'll be fined or possibly even suspended. And front office people can't say anything. So Wilmer said, and rightly so, it's up to fans and the media at large to put the pressure on MLS and Pro to make something happen, make changes in some way, shape, or form. So I'm making the call to you guys that are out there that if you have a moment, tweet MLS, tweet Pro, do it respectfully, but just tell them that we're not settling for this pile of dog poop they keep leaving on the pitch week in and week out, and that we demand accountability for the officials, and we demand public accountability for the officials. And when I say that, I don't mean in such a way that, like a 2-minute report in the NBA, it's not the greatest thing in the world because it's only the last have gotten worse for this very reason. I can look at the level of officiating that I should be able to expect, whether it's US Open Cup, whether it's international tournaments, whatever it may be, and I can see the clear disparity in MLS officiating versus other leagues and internationally and in international matches. And the reason I say this is US Open Cup is officiated by USSF, which grabs their officials from FIFA. Whereas with MLS, we don't use FIFA officials, we use Pro. Mm-hmm. And it is clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the difference between the two. There is an absolute gulf in talent level. I think where this problem has come from, Harry, is the following. When VAR was instituted this year, they had an already fairly thin talent pool of officials. Now they added 2 new positions for every match, the VAR official and the VAR assistant VAR official. So now you've had 2 additional positions that you're pulling from an already thin talent pool. So what you're essentially doing is you're taking this talent pool where the top level is probably okay, but as you start to move to the middle, it starts to get really bad and then way worse when it gets lower. You're taking those lower officials and you're actually saying, you know what, we have to use them more frequently because now we have 2 new positions. And so one of the things that I'm going to ask, and Eddie has already kind of said in the past that he would like to see this, is why has there not been a big push for ex-players to be fast-tracked through the officiating school, through the officiating training? Because I believe ex-players are not going to be the type that are going to sit there and, they're going to tend to look at it from a perspective that our current officials don't look at it from. And what I mean by I'm talking about offenses, I'm talking about the match in general. Players are going to take the situation into account. They're not just going to look at the situation in a vacuum. They're going to take the actual situation into account. They're going to take the match situation into account. And this is important because there is a difference between a bunch of players coming together because they're pissed off towards the end of a match after a very grueling match, and players coming together in the first 2 minutes of a match. It's completely different. There's completely 100% different. And the officiating should be different for a rivalry match versus a non-rivalry match. We had a rivalry match. SKC is a rival of ours, yet the official was not up to rivalry standards. But yes, in other words, what I'm saying is, it's not that the level of pro has not increased. The reason why it actually has decreased is because they brought in new officials to fill that void that they needed to fill for VAR to be instituted. And so you're getting less qualified officials throughout the entire ranks now. Whereas before, your officials would be, you had roughly, I think, 10 to 14 total officials, of which I think 3 to 5 were actually full-time officials. Yeah. The other thing is USSF, and rightfully so, since they can usually use the FIFA officials, they don't pour money into Pro. MLS is the only entity, MLS and NWSL and USL, are the only entities actually pouring money into Pro. So Pro only has that level to live up to. They don't ever have to live up to the FIFA level. They're not held to that accountability standard. So FIFA doesn't care, except when like a Mark Geiger goes to the World Cup or something like that. But at the end of the day, if we want to see improvement, we have to push for change. We have to ask for change. We have to demand change. We have to stay on Don Garber. We have to stay on the pro heads of officiating. There's a lot of different people involved in that. We have to continue to call it out when we see it, and it doesn't matter if it's a Dynamo match, if it's a USL match, if it's San Antonio, if it's RGV, if it's Dynamo, if it's, God forbid, FC Frisco, if it's SKC, whatever it is, we need to be willing to call out every time that we see bad officiating. Because until we start calling it out, instead of just shrugging it off as part of the game, until we call it out, it's never going to really, truly improve.
I think one of the biggest things that really got me annoyed is you mentioned in that last point, there's a lot of people out there on Twitter that say, oh, it's part of MLS, you know, this is never going to get fixed, so you might as well just live with it. Like, no, you have to do something about it. You know, why would you want to settle for mediocrity? And and I'm being generous when I say that pro referees are mediocre. Because mediocre, it just means that you're at the minimum of some sort of standard. This is subpar refereeing, subpar professionalism by some of these referees, and it is affecting, not only is it affecting teams when it comes to positions on the table with getting 3 points or getting 1 point or losing those 3 points, it's also affecting, believe it or not, it's also affecting the number of people in the stands, not just with Dynamo, in all of MLS.
Across the board, with the exception of your newer teams like LAFC and Atlanta and that. But even Seattle is seeing struggles. Portland are seeing struggles with attendance. It's the quality on the field of play is as high as it's ever been. The quality of officiating makes the games nearly unwatchable at this point. And it's sad because when you've elevated the quality of play so high and you've not elevated the quality of officiating, you're not going to draw in new fans. And a lot of your existing fans are going to look at it and go, this is garbage. Why would I watch this when I could watch Premier League? Why would I watch this when I could watch Bundesliga, Serie A? And speaking of Serie A, they just agreed to a deal with ESPN Plus for the 2019-20.
It's almost like MLS still believes that this is 5 years ago.
Yeah. Where
if you wanted to watch EPL or these other European leagues or even MX, it was like a niche channel.
Exactly.
Now all these greater leagues are so widely available with the same subscription. I mean, MLS, aren't you with ESPN as well?
Yeah.
Guess who's on there? You have, I believe you have the EFL Cup, you have the USL, you have Serie A now, and as well as other sports
and they're not going to stop at Serie A.
Yeah, no, they're going to. Yeah, you might start seeing Premier League.
I don't know about Premier League.
I know
I would not be surprised if they go after Bundesliga, if they go after Fox Sports Bundesliga contract. I would not be surprised to see them go after Eredivisie, which would be a perfect contract for them to get just because of how exciting that league can be because it's all about goals.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to get a contract with Liga 1 over in France.
Yes.
You know, there's a ton of opportunities now, and with broadcasting at the level that it's at and how much easier it is to broadcast with the technology that's available, point in case, you know, it's kind of crazy that MLS continues to operate in this mentality of we're a small league and, you know, we're going to do what we do, but we're a small league, so it shouldn't matter how we approach these things. You know, and Cisco says, you know, this is also...
he says, don't forget that as well as adding VAR officials, the league is adding more teams, meaning an extra 2 games to officiate compared to a couple years ago. And that's just this season. We're going to be adding more teams next season and the season after that. Got Nashville coming in.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a problem. It needs to be addressed now, because if it's not addressed now, it's only going to continue. Like I said, if it's not addressed now, it just empowers these officials to continue in the same way they're continuing, which means it's only going to get worse. More teams are going to be shafted. You know, at some point, we're going to see where the Dynamo don't get shafted in this kind of way, where the referee tends to err on the side of the Dynamo instead of the other way around. But for whatever reason, we just got 2 home matches back-to-back where the official decided to err on the side of the opposition, and in ways that didn't make any sense to the average normal person in the stands and pretty much everybody in the stands. And so, you know, I said this on Twitter as well. you know, if this was, and I said it actually to open the show, but if this was isolated, if this was just a one-off type of thing, I would be willing to say, you know what, it's kind of one of those things. Every once in a while, you're going to have a bad match, you know, bad officiation of a match. It's okay. We deal with it. We move on. But now to have it happen 2 matches, you know, 2 out of 3 matches really, and to have it happen at 2 home matches, this part of the vital, you know, this vital part of the season right now, it's, and to do so in such a way that you're costing not only the Dynamo, but you're changing the entire outlook of the Western Conference right now. Because if the Dynamo aren't at a competitive level because they don't have enough points to compete at the end of the season, the teams that they're facing are most likely going to be in the playoff picture at that point. LAFC, LA Galaxy, Seattle, SKC again. So all of these teams, if they're at the point where they're competing for a playoff spot, and the Dynamo don't have a shot at a playoff spot, and they, let's say, for instance, they win USOC, then they may not be trying to field the best roster possible. So now you're giving these teams a better shot to win those matches. So these types of things have a ripple effect. It's more than just the match we're watching. Don't get me wrong, those 3 points are valuable and very huge, and it sucks that we lost them. But on the flip side of it, it changes the entire outcome of a season. It changes the entire fortunes of other teams, simply because an official can't properly and professionally remove himself emotionally from a match and from the officiating work he's doing. And I say that because, again, Wilmer in the press conference after, good question, by the way, that you asked, you know, stated that an official spoke to him in a way that he would not expect, you know, he would not, that you shouldn't speak to anybody in. And to me, that's unprofessional. Period. End of story. It's unprofessional. And the fact that nothing more has been made of this either speaks to MLS's desire not to make more of this, Pro's desire not to make more of this, or that the Dynamo don't feel they have a leg to stand on and so they can't push it. So, you know, Wilmer did ask that the fans, you know, support the team and call this out. That's a big deal to me, and it should be a big deal to fans at home and people that are watching. If Wilmer was basically verbally assaulted, and that's kind of what the impression I got from what Wilmer was saying, that can't stand. That can't be allowed, because now, like I said, you know, by not disciplining this guy, you've allowed and empowered him to do it again. And said, it's okay, we're not going to discipline you if you do it again. So you've set the standard. You've set the precedence by not disciplining this particular official. Right now, we're going to go ahead and go to break. When we come back from break, we're hopefully going to have Eddie Robinson on. He should be calling in actually any minute now. When we get Eddie on, we're going to continue talking Dynamo and the officials. And I've got a few questions for him, and I think you guys will like what we're going to talk about. So stay tuned. And remember, in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to give away a pair of tickets. And just so you guys know, those tickets we're giving away for USOC semifinal, they are in section 123, so they're pretty spanking good tickets. So make sure you guys are tuned in, make sure you guys are in chat, and we'll be back in a minute. Excuse me. Your phone is connected, right?
Yes.
Are we ready? All right, and we're back. Oh boy. You're listening to Generation Orange on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. We've actually got with us right now a super special guest. We always love getting Eddie Robinson on. First of all, Eddie, how's it going? How are you feeling? How are things?
I can't complain. I had a little bit too much for supper, so I'm a little uncomfortable, so it's nice to sit down and hop on the phone.
Well, if you hit a food coma and you stop talking, we'll just keep rolling. Don't worry about it.
No, don't worry about that. As I'm getting older and exercising less, I eat a little bit less, so my full belly isn't as full as it once was.
You know, it's interesting because I actually got to go out to the I don't know what you're calling it nowadays, but it used to be the burger tour, and now it's become kind of I think the next step is the Tex-Mex tour. I
don't know what I'm going to call it.
We'll just need to call it the E-Rob tour.
Just got to figure out where we're going to go next.
Call it the E-Rob high quality food tour.
That's too much for a hashtag.
You're right.
Got to be. Yeah, too much for a hashtag. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that if you guys get a chance to, Eddie, these are open invites to the public, to any fans that want to come out and sit down and eat a good lunch with a bunch of fellow fans of the Dynamo and I would assume Dash. It's a good time. There were a few of us at Nachos here in Pearland, and it was great food. That was fantastic. They do a wonderful job.
Oh my God!
And it was more.
I did most of the talking that day, though, so I apologize.
Oh no, it was great. It was great. I love getting you talking because if you get talking, we don't have to shut you up. We can just listen, and it's amazing what comes out of your mouth. With that said, I got some questions for you that I want to ask, that we want to run through, and I know you're kind of time limited, so we'll keep them kind of quick and brief. But I feel that's important because you bring the perspective as a former player, that it's really important that we get that perspective whenever possible, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of think through things in a way that we normally don't think through them. So first question for you, Eddie, as a former player, was it harder to have a lack of consistency from one official to the next, or to shift from referees not calling anything, similar to how it is currently in the NWSL, to then have referees suddenly calling everything to the harshest degree? Which was harder for you?
That's a really good question. That's a hard one to answer. Listen, referees have to prepare for every team and every player that they're going to see individually. And I think as players, it's our responsibility. It's the coaches, the video staff, the analysts on each staff in Major League Soccer to prepare the players. Listen, this guy likes to use his whistle. This guy likes to give a card. I think it's very important for the players to understand that referees are different. They're going to be different. They're human beings. They're going to be different. So I don't think it's fair for players to expect the exact same consistency from referee to referee, game after game, because referees cannot expect the same consistency from player to player and team to team, game after game.
That's fair. I think that's fair. And so next question for you. Wilmer said in his press conference, and I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that, but he said in his press conference that the referee said things to him which, and I quote, nobody should say to somebody else. Have you, in your playing career, on or off the pitch, or in your coaching career, or otherwise, ever experienced a referee or official saying things to you that you would not expect them to say to someone else necessarily?
No, I never experienced that. And I would really love to know what exactly was said, because I can guarantee you that if you flipped it and you asked the referee, have you ever had anything said to you that you didn't expect, that was harsh, that was awful? They would have a list a mile long.
Oh yeah.
The way that players and coaches treat referees today is unacceptable. The things they see, things that we see. I mean, you can read lips.
Oh yeah.
Blank your mother over and over again. You're a blank. You're a blank.
Well, Dom was
because
guilty
of a foul call.
Dom was guilty.
I mean,
of it.
listen. There's not a player or coach that I can think of, and if there are any out there that don't do that, I apologize in advance. But I don't think there's a player or coach that can claim the moral high ground when it comes to a referee saying something vulgar to them, because the referees hear from the players and coaches and fans and social media nowadays. I have a hard time believing that it was something over the edge, other than threatening his life. Right? I can't. Again, I wasn't there.
Yeah,
I don't know what
exactly.
exactly was said.
Without
But what
no-
I do know is what is said to referees nowadays from coaches and players. So
That's fair. That's totally fair.
the jury's out for me unless I know exactly what was said.
Yeah. And I really wish that either Wilmer or the Dynamo would come out and, say, hey, the public, deserves to know what was said since Wilmer brought it up. It feels like Wilmer has been around the game long enough to know whether it should have been something that he would expect to hear on a regular basis or not. And if it was above and beyond, if it was something that in my curiosity tends to peak around what, like you said, what was said and what was the flagrancy behind it, what was the intent behind it. Was it just F you and that sort of thing? And then, okay, whatever, you just shrug it off. That's just a guy pissed off that life goes on. But if it was a verbal assault in some way directed directly at Wilmer, regardless of why it was instigated, regardless of how it came about, it still should be addressed. And I would expect, at the very least, I would expect it to be addressed. Not necessarily for him to come out and apologize, but for it to at least be addressed and for at least there to be something done. And to this point, to my knowledge, nothing's been done. So, but again, it falls on the Dynamo or it falls on Wilmer to say, to release what was said in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you can't expect accountability if you're not willing to say what was said. So number
right,
three,
but we got to remember we're dealing with Major League Soccer, and they're the kings of non-transparency, right?
and that is perfectly
The
right.
Dynamo may want to. Chris Canetti may be calling league offices like, guys, we want to put this out. We want to put this out. And they're telling them, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know. Before the Dash game on Sunday night versus Utah, I had some time and I was in just outside of the locker rooms. And a lot of the people that work the Dynamo games work the Dash games, the people that work in the tunnel.
Yeah.
And that work security. I was talking to them, and they were telling me some of the things that they heard.
Yep.
And none of it for me, and this is hearsay.
Yeah.
Okay,
of
this
course.
is hearsay.
Of course.
I'm not going to repeat what I heard, but none of it for me seemed like it was out of line from either Wilmer or the referees, multiple. So I don't know. And I go back to the things that players and coaches say to the referees nowadays, more the players than anything. And not defending Wilmer or any of the actions that he may have taken, because again, I don't know.
Absolutely.
But it's a culmination of weeks of frustration, right?
Yep.
I mean, it seems like after every single Dynamo game, the press asks him about a questionable call that went against the Dynamo, not for the Dynamo,
Absolutely.
but against the Dynamo. So the frustration for him has been building up week after week after week. And obviously he was super emotional after that game.
Yeah. So this humorously ties into number 4. Do you perceive, actually number 3. As a former player, was there ever any accountability to your knowledge for referees or any opportunity for teams to appeal red cards or suspensions, again, to your knowledge, while you were a player?
Yes, while I was a player, about accountability, I don't know. Again, even before pro, Major League Soccer and the United States Soccer Federation didn't disclose any information regarding referees and if they were suspended or if they were reprimanded or anything like that had they had a bad game. But we did have the opportunity to appeal red cards. And you had to do it as an individual through the players union, and Don Garber was the one making the decision.
Okay.
Don Garber.
Yeah.
Of all the red cards I got in my entire career, I only appealed one. And I thought it was ridiculous.
You got red cards,
But it was
Eddie? You're
upheld.
kidding me, Eddie. You didn't get red cards in your career.
Yeah, no. There's only like 2 or 9 or 10 or something. I don't remember.
Something, yeah.
But no, listen, I only appealed one.
Yeah.
And I thought it was ridiculous, but I was appealing to Don Garber, right? And I was appealing to someone who never played soccer, who doesn't understand the nuances of soccer.
Yeah.
So, which was ridiculous. Thank goodness that that's since been changed. The league recognized that needed to be changed, and now they're on the right track with this independent panel. I think some other things could be changed. I'm not here to criticize them tonight. But yes, we did have the option to appeal red cards. No, we never did hear anything. If there were any repercussions for referees as far as suspensions or reprimands, if they had a bad game.
Okay. That's actually really good to know. Number 4, at this point, as a former player, do you perceive the quality of officiating as having improved, regressed, or stayed the same since you retired as a player? And this is across this is across MLS and NWSL, since now you've had the opportunity to watch, NWSL matches.
I don't think that I've been in NWSL long enough to have an educated opinion on that. I just don't. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that. But with MLS, the effort. I mean, regardless of what you think, and I think it's so subjective from person to person, from fan to fan, from coach to coach, and player to player. Regardless of whether you think it's improved, it's declined, they've put the effort in. They've put a lot of money into making it. So what I will say is I approve of the effort that the league has made to improve the quality and the standard. Introducing VAR. I mean, if you look at the way VAR was used in the World Cup, it was outstanding.
Absolutely.
I really don't think they got anything wrong. I think the time frame from the decision to use it to making the final call was amazing.
Yeah.
It was, 15 to 30 seconds most times. When we look at MLS, it could be 2 to 3 minutes at times. It can be detrimental to the pace of play, which is why a lot of us like the game of soccer. I still think there's a way to go. I don't think that pro referees or the U.S. Soccer Federation or Major League Soccer would disagree with that. I think they still have a ways to go. I think, listen, I've been vocal and criticized referees at times, but I'll also say that when I'm doing a TV broadcast for the Dynamo and I see a referee or a referee crew or an assistant referee or a fourth official do something well, I applaud it.
Yeah.
I applaud it. I give just as much accolades as I do criticism. I had a chance, last week to speak at a referee course at St. Thomas University, and it was the day of the Dynamo game against Kansas City. And Chris Pinso and his crew showed up and spoke to the referees, and it was great hearing some of the things that they were saying. And I told the referees I was when Glenn and I were doing the Portland Houston game a couple weeks back, early in the game, I remember the referee was stuck somewhere around the center circle. The play had come over in front of the benches near midfield, and there was what I thought was a foul on a Portland player. And I didn't hear a whistle immediately. So my eyes immediately went to the referee. He didn't have his whistle up to his mouth, but his head turned like he was looking at his fourth official.
Mm-hmm.
And his fourth official either said something to him in his ear or gestured something that caused the referee to call a foul. Glenn was about to say something. I stopped Glenn and I said, "This is what I love to see. Teamwork among the officials."
Absolutely.
I love to see when the center official utilizes his fourth official and his ARs, because I don't think that's done enough.
I agree completely.
And I think at times assistant referees are timid.
Yes.
And they don't want to call the foul.
Yes.
And it frustrates me when the referee blows a whistle and then the assistant referee throws the flag up in the air. No,
Yeah.
you don't need to do that. He's already blown the whistle.
Yep.
Don't do that.
Absolutely.
It's almost condescending, right?
Yep.
You see a foul, you call it. You guys are a team. Stick together. That's what I love to see. I love seeing that teamwork among officials.
Because they typically have a different point of view because the angles are different.
Yes.
And there are a lot of instances where ARs have a better point of view because maybe they're not closer, but they're at a different angle, and so they can see different types of contact than the referee who may be, other side or blocked
and even
by
the
a
fourth
player.
official.
Yeah.
And even the fourth official, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's say they get a throw-in wrong at midfield.
Yeah.
That's not going to, I mean, that no harm, no foul. Okay, big deal. It's not going to cause a goal. It's not going to cause anything to happen.
Yeah.
Then later on, that maybe there was a suspicion of handball somewhere around midfield.
Yep.
Well, not a big deal. It's not going to cause any change in the flow of the game. Yeah. But what it does change is the mentality of the players, the mentality of the coaches. They're getting frustrated. They're getting angry. So when it comes to game management, those little ones that the referees miss over the course of the game, do they affect the outcome? Absolutely not. Not even close. They have nothing to do with it. But when it comes to escalation, attitude, mass confrontation, those little things can add up.
Absolutely.
So that's why, for me, it's vitally important that the referee use his assistant referees, tell them, guys, I need your help. If you see something, get your flag up. I got your back just like you got mine.
Absolutely. And that's really good, actually. And I didn't expect to dive into that, but that's awesome. So number 5, the final question I've got for you tonight. You've tweeted out before that you would like to see Major League Soccer and United States Soccer Federation engage former players with the opportunity to fast track through their training program to become referees. With questions recently arising over how stretched current referees are with the addition of VAR and the expansion of additional teams in Major League Soccer, do you think it's needed now more than ever?
Now more than ever. I think it's always been needed, to be honest. I think that if you look at, let's say, the NFL, how many officials were former players, at least college level? A lot of them.
Yeah, that's very fair.
So they understand the nuances of the game. They can read certain shifts in energy, and they recognize the physics that are involved. They don't always just use their eyes to make calls. They use their ears.
Yeah.
They use their, sixth sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody goes into a tackle really hard, it happens 100 miles an hour, and I hear a big thud, I know that it was foot to ball, not foot to shin. So if one player goes down, grabbing his leg and rolling around and screaming, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not going to jump out with a card right away.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to VAR because I'm using my ears, right? Or looking at recognizing the spin of a ball. Guy's shooting, and the spin just changes a little bit. He shot from 25 yards. I know there was a slight deflection.
Absolutely.
Given a corner kick.
Absolutely.
Just the knowledge that comes along with playing. And I'm not talking about guys, and I've even included NWSL players, former NWSL players, USL players, MLS players, former pros that they didn't play 10, 15 years, so they didn't make much money, but they played long enough to be able to recognize certain situations and certain things. They're fit. I was offered when I came out, when I retired, to be fast tracked. 2 years, going to USL, get you going quick. The money wasn't good enough. I said no. If they offered $90,000 a year to these former pros and did 3 to 4 a year, just 3 to 4 a year, not a lot. Just get 3 this year.
Yeah.
Spend 12 months working with them. 3 next year, 3 the following year. By the time the World Cup gets to the United States in 2026, you'd be hard-pressed to find many referees that aren't American, that are better than what we have produced in the upcoming 8 years.
That's fair.
I'm telling you. I think it would be amazing. It's nothing against the current referees, but that experience of having played and having just being able to sense the way that things are going. I mean, a lot of times you'll hear, how do you judge intent? You don't know what's going through that player's mind. Well, if you've been in that situation 1,000 times, literally 1,000 times, or you've been in a game where one of your teammates was in that situation 1,000 times, you get it. You just get it.
Yeah.
You get
Absolutely.
it. You know what's coming. You know how to handle players. You know how to preempt things. And again, this is not me bashing the current core of referees. Knowing how much work they put into it, knowing how much they traveled, how much time they're away from their families. I mean, the top pro officials in Major League Soccer are away from home over 200 days a year, right?
Yeah.
And they have families.
Yep.
So, I mean, these guys put in the work. But I honestly do think that if the U.S. Federation, the United States Soccer Federation, has a ton of money sitting around, spend a little bit more, and enticed former MLS, NWSL, and USL players, I think we would have some outstanding referees. And even you look at it, you look at the ICC, the International Champions Cup, that's been going on for the last few weeks. They're using MLS officials.
Yeah.
They're taking the best officials from MLS games and putting officials that have 5 games of experience for Houston versus Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The referee for the Houston-Philadelphia game had done 5 MLS games prior,
Correct.
while you've got your best officials doing International Champions Cup. I mean,
that's a fair. I think call. Very fair.
I'm not here to bash the referees. I'll go back to Chris Pinso. I mean, did he make some mistakes? Absolutely. But the Dynamo players have to be more accountable for their behavior. They have to be more disciplined. Darwin Surin's red card is inexcusable. Absolutely. He didn't have to put his arm up near the guy's face.
Absolutely.
Whether you think it was a red card or not, why can Darwin Surin not go down by the waist and push the Kansas City player away?
Yeah.
Albert Elise, 2 games in a row now, he's bumped a referee. Literally come to challenge, argue a call, and bumped the referee. Against Philadelphia, he got a yellow card. Against Portland, he didn't get anything. That's unacceptable.
Absolutely.
The discipline that the team has shown for me, even if you're hard done, you can argue it like Wimmer does. He can go into the media, he can complain. Wimmer can go to Howard Webb. I know he had a meeting. Apparently, Wimmer had a meeting with Howard Webb, the head of Pro, yesterday or today. There are avenues to go about, but that kind of behavior on the field is unacceptable. And, I really hope Wimmer addresses it.
Let me ask you this as a former player, and I didn't give you a heads up I was going to ask this, and frankly, I didn't come up with this until just now. So if you don't want to answer, you don't have to.
Okay.
I have a question as a player or as a former player. I'm going to let you come at this from either angle. Do you find that players tend to be more demonstrative now than they were back when you played in regards to the officials? I mean, you said that they tend to be more forceful with their language towards the officials, and they tend to not hold back in terms of that. But I'm curious from a...
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think players now are more demonstrative, are more vulgar. Listen, I am completely guilty of cussing at a referee. I'm completely guilty of it. I'm completely guilty of unacceptable behavior as a player. But I have hindsight. Man, hindsight's 2020. I have life experience, so now I have perspective.
Absolutely.
I can look back at it.
Absolutely.
Wilmer has that. Every coach in Major League Soccer has that. Every coach around the world has that. We're all experienced players who can look back on our careers. We can look back now at other people's careers, at our behavior, and judge whether or not it's acceptable. Okay, my behavior as a player at times is not acceptable.
That's fair.
At all. I look back on it, and some things that I did or said to officials, it's embarrassing now. It's embarrassing. But I recognize it. And, I'll give you a for instance. When a few years back when I was a coach with the Dynamo Academy, the first or second year, a foul was called in favor of my team, but my player sits on the ground and he raises his hand towards the referee, like give him a yellow card. I immediately got up and said to the 4th official, that's bullcrap. My player shouldn't be doing that. No player should be doing that. If any of my players do that again, give him a yellow card. Because I don't like to see it. I think it's bad for the game.
Absolutely.
And players have been able to get away with too much. When you talk about the embellishment, trying to trick the referee, time wasting, gamesmanship, all of these things. I understand that you want to do it. I did it. But a line has to be drawn at some point, because if a line is not drawn, it's going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And then where are we at? Right? Are we wearing face masks and pads?
Yeah.
It's a line has to be drawn. It's up to the officials. The one thing that I said to the officials at the clinic, or their licensing course last week, was stop taking so much crap. Do not let them treat you the way that they treat you. You guys go into games knowing players' reputation. Make players going to games knowing your reputation. And your reputation is, I'm not going to put up with any crap. You're not going to cuss at me. You're not going to kick the ball away after a call foul. You're not going to roll around on the ground if you're not injured.
Yeah. Set
your reputation. So we'll see. And only time will tell. But I think that there's just, I mean, we could sit here and talk about this for hours, huh?
Oh, absolutely. So final question for you before you go. Have we decided yet on where our Tex-Mex place is going to be next? I'm just kidding. I know we haven't yet.
Right. No, we haven't. I'm open for suggestions. Priority goes to those that met up at Nachos. I was looking on Yelp and I typed in Tex-Mex Houston. I got like 6,000 hits. So anybody out there that wants to recommend the place, please feel free.
Absolutely.
RGV?
No, somewhere in Houston.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Houston or I mean, Pearland Works.
Well, no, he said the Valley, and I was like, no.
No. I'm not driving 5 hours. I'm not driving 5 hours for a good enchilada.
Absolutely. Oh, heck no. If I'm gonna drive that far, I'll tell Edson to bring it back to me. So it's all good.
Yes, please.
With that said, Eddie, we got a hard stop here at the top of the hour, so we're gonna let you go. But
Perfect.
We really appreciate you coming on and talking. We appreciate your perspective. That's why we really wanted to get you on this week. And we were glad, humorously, ironically enough, that the situation occurred on Saturday, so we could get your perspective. I think there is something to be said for the wisdom of experience. And I think that's something you can't replicate. And so, along with you, I do condone that. I think MLS and USSF should definitely encourage foreign players to become officials and increase the pay that they would receive, so that they actually find it as a viable long-term option for their career path. Because, again, the wisdom of experience goes a long way, and like you said, there's an intuition that comes along with it that's hard to replicate. But with that said, where can people find you on Twitter, and then any information you might have about how they can keep track of the next upcoming meet and eat?
Twitter for the food. Eddie Robinson 2 on Twitter. I'm sure you guys. Well, I know you guys have put my handle in your tweets like 47 times in the last 2 days. So
I'm sorry, did your phone blow up? I'm sorry.
Follow you guys, they'll find it. And like I said, I'm open to these suggestions. If you're hungry, don't look at my Instagram, which is also Eddie Robinson 2, because all I do is post pictures of amazing food. But I'm very interactive. If anybody wants to reach out on Twitter, ask questions, I'm very interactive, and I try my best to answer everything. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
For sure. Again, thanks for coming on, Eddie. We'll get you on again sometime here in the near future. And you know what? Keep on keeping on, and try not to pack on too many more pounds.
Sounds good, brother. All right.
Have a good one, man. Bye.
Later.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to break. When we come back from break, we're going to get Julio on. We're actually going to call him during the break. So, that was really good stuff from Eddie there, actually. Gives you a different perspective, and I think he made a lot of good points in terms of accountability for players. And I think we'll talk about that maybe a little later in the show. But we got the top of the hour, so we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to have Julio on, and again, remember, we're giving away a pair of USOC tickets for the semifinal tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow. It's in section. Those are in section 123. You have to be. Not only do you have to be in the YouTube watching the video, you have to be in the YouTube chat. You have to subscribe. You have to share the video, and preferably follow us on Twitter. It's worth your time. It's worth your effort. We do appreciate you guys, especially all of you that are already tuned in. Make sure you share it out so that way your friends and family can tune in as well. We appreciate it. And like I said, we'll be back in 2 minutes, so right around 8:03 or so.
But I'm foolish. I need you. Know that I've been missing. But I'm foolish. I need you. Know that I've been missing. But I'm foolish. I need you. Know that I've been missing. But I'm foolish. I need you.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, I heard that. It was pretty good.
All right, we are back. You're listening to Generation Orange, a Houston soccer
Internet
live internet show and podcast. Coming up on this segment, we are going to be giving away a pair of tickets to the U.S. Open Cup semifinal match against LAFC tomorrow night. And we have a special guest with us, Julio Urena, who is actually my personal season ticket rep. And quite frankly, even though some people will argue with me, the absolute best ticket rep that I've ever had. He goes out of his way to make sure that I'm taken care of. And not just me, but all of the people that I bring to matches are taken care of. And so, Julio, for that, I appreciate it and I thank you. And so I wanted to bring you on, Julio, because I've seen a lot on Twitter recently and other social media about fans that they're having trouble, talking to their rep or finding their rep. They don't even know who their rep is. Their rep has left and they don't feel like they have a rep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to help you have an opportunity to address that, but also because I want those fans to know that that the sales team, the ticket team, are paying attention. They're not just ignoring those fans. That they're aware that this is going on, and I would try to find out what steps are being taken to make sure they're being taken care of. So, with that being said, Julio, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Appreciate you having me on and everything.
For sure. We've wanted to get you on for a while. It's just been a bit of a trouble to make it happen. We wanted to get you on last week, but you decided to take a trip to the Barca versus Roma match, and was that in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken? Did you go to enemy territory?
It actually was not in Dallas. It was in Arlington, which is a completely different city from what I've been told. So.
From what you've been told. Oh, I see. I'll give you a pass. Arlington, I'll give you a pass this time. Next time, not so much. But this time, I'll give you a pass. I totally understand. How was the match? How was Barca Roma? Was it a good match?
Oh man, it was good. I mean, I'm was happy to be in that stadium and be able to see that match and see 6 goals. Was pretty cool. So
that's awesome. So first question for you, Julio. I've seen season ticket holders on social media indicate. Oh, I've already said that part. So those fans who feel like they either don't have a ticket rep or they don't know who their ticket rep is, what can they do now to make sure they get taken care of as a season ticket holder? What steps can they take? Who can they reach out to, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there's many ways going about it, just depending on how people want to get it taken care of. Definitely do that through email, whether that's emailing me or emailing our info line, which kind of goes up to everybody here, so we can definitely give a shout, or over the phone, right? So calling directly through that main line, which is that 713-276-7500, or hitting me up directly, right? I don't mind talking to people and stuff. So mine's just the same number. Last numbers are 34, so 7534. If you need any help. So yeah, we definitely can connect anybody with their representative, or if no longer wanting to work with their representative, figure out other transitions on that end. So
absolutely. My goal, Julio, is to get the entire stadium just under you. That way we just want to take a rep for everybody. No, I'm kidding.
And just for note, you're probably only saying I'm the best rep because I've been the only rep that you've had. So
that's not true. I had I want to say her name was Jennifer to start with. And then I had some slub who didn't call me whatsoever. And then I got you, and that was the luckiest thing I ever had happen. So just so you know, that's not true. So number 2, to you as a ticket rep, why is U.S. Open Cup such a big deal? And why are you guys making, from an organization standpoint, such a big push behind the U.S. Open Cup and seeing the team try to make the final and hopefully raise the cup?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things with the organization is winning championships, right? And I think anybody tells you that if you have an opportunity to win a championship, you want to go for it, right? So U.S. Open Cup's one of the longest running tournaments here in the U.S. and just like FA Cup somewhere else in England and stuff like that. It's an opportunity to win a championship, but also an opportunity to jump into Champions League as well. So being able to play against other teams in your region and CONCACAF, it's definitely a good thing. So getting back to the old days with the Dynamo. So
for sure. And I should note, the team that wins the final receives a pretty good sum of money in allocation money, and then, like you said, they get the CONCACAF Champions League berth. But they also, MLS also, there's other special considerations that are made as well related to making CONCACAF Champions League. So, from that reason, it is very important. So with that being said, we're going to give those tickets away. What we have done is we kind of track who all's in our chat. We know if you've subscribed. We know if you've shared the video and the stream. So Julio, give us just a minute. We're going to go ahead and give away those tickets right now. If you are in the YouTube chat, do me a favor real quick and say, I am here, and we will track that. I say we're going to give it away right now. We're going to give it away after the next question. But make sure you say, I am here, or something to that effect, so that we know that you're active in the YouTube chat, and we'll be giving those tickets away after this next question. So the next question for you, Julio, is, personally, I've seen fans complain and heard fans complain about a lot of different things related to the overall game day experience. Is there some place those fans can go specifically to voice those concerns so that they actually, reach somebody as opposed to just kind of throwing them into the wind, if you will?
For sure, yeah. I mean, something that I've mentioned to you and most, if not all, of my members that I work with is I feel like I'm kind of the biggest resource for them as their communicator, right? So I'm the one who's gonna fight for you and tell you that what we need to do to help out and everything like that. So I mean, if it was any of my members, I'd definitely say contacting me is going to be the best way to do that, but as well as any other members contacting their specific representatives. The only way we're going to be able to change something is if we hear about it, and you come and address it to us, right? So that's kind of going to be the best way and how to kind of go about that. So I know there's some things that you've told me.
You have the right, you have the option, the right to voice your opinion, voice your frustration, and do it to your ticket rep and let them know if, there may be some things they don't have control over, but there may be some things that they do, and you may just think that there's no way that they're going to be able to make any difference in that. But the fact is,
right. If it's any kind of representative, like I know some guy that you guys talk to all out on Twitter and stuff, being Jay, right? Jay is definitely a fighter for all the fans and making sure everything's done the right way and everything for that. So, I mean, regardless of what it is, if it's game day experience, if it's, feeling like you're lacking on benefits, tickets and stuff like that, regardless of whatever it is,
Awesome. Okay, so it's time to give away the tickets. Are you ready? Do you have a number of people that you've listed out? Okay. So
I'm going to be picking out a random. I have a randomizer.
All right, go ahead. Go for it. Pick it out at random.
Come on, computer. Stud Muffin.
Stud Muffin. Congrats, Stud Muffin. So I will get with you. Send Julio in the YouTube chat. Actually, don't send it in the YouTube chat. If you have us at Gen Orange Radio, send us a message or send us a tweet so we can follow you on Twitter. If you don't have Twitter, hit us up on Facebook, I guess. Edson will work it out with you so we can get you those tickets. Congratulations, Stud Muffin. That's awesome. Hopefully you'll enjoy those seats. From what I understand, Julio, those are great seats. So that's awesome. All right, cool. So let's talk U.S. Open Cup real quick. So our opponents coming up tomorrow is LAFC. And one thing that some fans may have noticed is that LAFC just brought in a couple of players. One of those was, who did they just bring in? I'm drawing a blank.
Christian Ramirez.
Christian Ramirez from Minnesota. It's important for, I think, a lot of listeners out there to know that Christian Ramirez will not be eligible, similar to the LAFC Canadian players. No, I'm just kidding. He's going to be ineligible to play in U.S. Open Cup against the Dynamo because he played in Open Cup against the Dynamo for Minnesota. And once you've played for one team, you cannot play for a different team in the same cup. So that works to our advantage in that particular instance. But LAFC, they bring an interesting style. They have a lot of talent up top, similar to the Dynamo in that regards. They've got some strength defensively. They've got some, decent older players. Simon, Zimmerman, who isn't older necessarily, but MLS veteran for sure. And then they've got some quality midfielders in DeRossi, but they also have a few youngsters, but they're also a new team. And they're coming into Houston. So if you had to say something to fans out there about why they should care about, why they should not why they should care, but why they should come to this match, why this match over, say, another match, what would you say, besides just the whole chance of the final berth and all of that? But why should they get hyped about this match?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as, playoffs last year, right? Why did we get hyped for the Dynamo making the postseason and being able to host a game at home, which led up to a really great run here this past year. So this is exactly the same situation, and we should expect, fans to come out in that same way. Looking forward to that final berth, and this could be that last game that we host here at home, given that if Chicago wins their game, right, and we're going up to Chicago for the final. So
yeah, we're pulling for Philly is what we're pulling.
We're definitely pulling for Philly because we want that rematch.
And
for
we
sure.
also want the final here. Let's be real.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, awesome, Julio. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to the conversation, or any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
Oh no, I mean, I think I gave out my number here a second ago, and also the interested in coming out to the game tomorrow and wanting to purchase some tickets, we can definitely help you out in the office and give you guys a little bit of a discount there as well if you guys are interested in coming out. So
why don't you go ahead and give that phone number again, and also give your email address, so if they just want to email, they can do that. Some people don't like talking on the phone. I don't know, they're weird, but whatever.
For sure, I'm one of those who doesn't like talking on the phone. So
man, I will say, for you not like talking on the phone, you do a darn good job at it.
So just so that number out there, it's 713-276-7534. And my email is going to be my first initial last name, JYERENA at HoustonDynamo.com.
Fantastic. Well, Julio, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate you coming on and talking about the fan experience and, offering an opportunity for those fans who feel frustrated with the overall experience, a means and a method to, a place they can vent those frustrations to. As always, Julio, it's fantastic to talk to you. Hopefully you'll stop by my seats tomorrow and say hi, because it'd be great to actually talk off the record. For sure. No worries. But yeah, again, I appreciate you guys having me on, and especially having that voice out for the fans. It's definitely cool to see. I know we've been chatting about being on for a while, so I'm glad we were able to finally make it work out. That's for sure. It really is good to have you on, and we'll have to do it again in the very near future. But for now, we're going to let you go. We've got plenty of other stuff to talk about, and only about 40 minutes left to do it. So with that said, Julio, again, thank you very much, man. Have a good one. Yeah, thanks, guys. Mm-hmm. Bye. So, I wanted, I asked Julio to come on this week because I really wanted to, and I mentioned it already, but there's a lot of fans out there that feel disconnected, whether it's from the team or from the front office or from sales or whatever it is. They're frustrated over a whole bunch of stuff, but specifically, they feel like their voice isn't heard. They feel like, nothing they say changes or matters.
Or they feel like they're being given the runaround. Exactly.
They feel like nobody's listening. Really, is what it ultimately comes to. And so I want you guys to know, as somebody who has voiced his opinion repeatedly to Julio, as someone who's voiced his opinion to Jay Adelberg a few times as well, that they do listen, and they really do. If they have the power to do anything, they will do it. Now, they don't have power to bring in big name signings, so don't even bother with that. They don't have the power to change the on the pitch, match quality. They can't do that. There's nothing they have control over when it comes to that. But if you have a problem with somebody around you, you don't, it's just not working with your seat people that are near you, whatever it may be, whether it's you've had an issue at a concession stand, something like that, you want to bring friends, but, for whatever reason, you're not able to get the tickets or whatever, just talk to them. You never know, and like I said, a lot of your ticket reps, if you give them an opportunity to give, especially if you're going to bring somebody new, to give them a truly new experience, they're going to do what they can. You know, I've had a number of times where Julio's gone out of his way to, you know, I've brought a friend of mine who's never been to a soccer game, or I brought a friend of mine who's never been to a live sporting event. And Julio went out of his way to make sure that you know, that my friends are taken care of. And it's not just me, he's done it for other people as well. So just bear that in mind, that there is somebody that's there to listen, and it's not just Julio. Julio is one of many. But it's important to know that they exist, that they are there. And like I asked Julio early on, you know, if you don't feel like you have a rep, or if your rep isn't calling and talking to you, or you're not calling and talking to them, or you just don't know who your rep is, or you feel like your rep isn't meeting your needs, do yourself a favor and reach out to Julio. I know some people, they're like, you know, hey, I don't know who my rep is. It doesn't matter. Just call Julio and let him figure out for you who he needs to connect you with, and go from there. Because I can tell you the experience is tenfold better when you have an engaged season ticket holder rep, because you feel like you actually matter. You have somebody who's taking care of your account, somebody who's taking care of you. So yeah, with that said, I think we'll go ahead and hop to break a little bit early this time. And when we come back, we're going to actually talk RGV.
I carried you home, taking all the weight off your shoulders. Now we're long gone, falling into 1 year older. It's funny how our love began when I was sober. Now I stumble in a room where nobody else cares. Now I'm in two minds thinking about you. I'm in two minds thinking whether I'm too kind to give you all of my truth. I'm in two minds thinking. Now I'm in two minds thinking about you. I'm in two minds thinking whether I'm too kind to give you all of my truth. I'm in two minds thinking. We've been knocked down way too many times, and now my tries deja vu round, spinning me into another lost time. Tell me where this road will end before I drive over the edge. Give me one break to recover myself, because I can't bear. Now I'm in two minds thinking about you. I'm in two minds thinking whether I'm too kind to give you all of my truth. I'm in two minds thinking. Now I'm in two minds thinking about you. I'm in two minds thinking whether I'm too kind to give you all of my truth. I'm in two minds thinking.
And we're back. You're listening to Generation Orange, or watching Generation Orange on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. Thanks, Down in the Valley, and Edson, and Jacob.
You're welcome.
Before we went to break, we were talking about U.S. Open Cup, which is awesome, and I'm so excited to be going tomorrow.
By the way, don't forget to make sure if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and we do have tipping open. The link is in the description. You guys want to tip us whatever you want, $1, $3, $5. You want to pay for
$100. Hey, if you want $100, we're not going to argue.
If you want to pay for this month's rent, go ahead.
Yes, do that. That would be fantastic.
But
no, seriously though, I mean,
anything helps.
Everything helps. It really does. And just so you guys know, we do this. We make nothing off this. We can both say that very adamantly. We make nothing off this. We don't have any sponsorships. We're trying. There's just no monetary gain for us in this. We do this because we love the Dynamo. We do this because we love the Dash. We do this because we love the Toros. We do this because we love soccer. We do this because we love you guys. And so, this is really truly the definition of a labor of love. We put a lot of time and effort every week into this. And we've put a lot of time and effort into it in general.
Love doesn't pay the bills.
Love does not pay the bills. That is 100% for sure.
Hashtag Julio is real.
Yeah.
Make it viral.
Very true. It's time. It is time for RGV Express.
All right, everybody.
Do you not have an intro? You normally have like a segue thing going
no,
on.
because I completely overhauled the graphics.
Nice. I guess you need to work on that one. You gotta
Yes.
get RGV Express one.
Yeah.
So welcome to RGV Express, the one-way express ticket to the Valley.
Yeah. So everybody, welcome to Down in the Valley Express. It's this is pretty much like kind of like a little teaser from we're going to be talking about, what Jacob and I are going to be talking about on Thursday for Down in the Valley. And so this Saturday the Toros played Las Vegas Lights at Sin City at Las Vegas in Cashman Field. Sadly, the Toros came home with, or actually they're not coming home yet. They have to go to Sacramento. But they left Cashman Field with 0 points. They lost 1-0.
It's like every Houston team with the exception of the Dash.
Yeah. I mean,
okay, the Dynamo, the Dash.
Except for Brazos Valley.
Tigres.
Oh.
And the Astros that night as well. It was a straight one.
The only one of my favorite teams that won was Real Madrid.
Oh, Madrid. Continue.
But so it was 0-0 for most of the game. It was around the 80th minute that Wiki Dios, Joel Wiki, scored.
I want you to say that 5 times fast.
Wiki Dios, Wiki Dios, Wiki Dios, Wiki Dios, Wiki Dios, Wiki Dios.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
No, but his name is Joel Wiki, but in Mexico we call him Wiki Dios, but kind of as a sarcastic kind of way because he's never been a good player.
Oh.
Ouch!
That's even harsher when you get burned by a good player.
Exactly.
I mean, by a not good player.
Yeah, and so it was after a corner kick that it was kind of awkward because it was Omar Salgado and the other guy that they were both in the corner and they had no idea what was going to. Then all of a sudden, one of them just kind of passes the ball to the other one, to Omar Salgado, and he looked surprised, like, oh, I guess I'm going to take it. So he sends it in, and Joel Wiki is able to get past, I believe it was Omar Ontiveros, and hit the ball. Nico Horty kind of got a little touch to it, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't enough. Before that goal, you had a couple of opportunities by the Toros that were not taken advantage of. To be fair, Ferrino, which is the Las Vegas goalie, it was like if you put in FIFA, you put 99 sliders for CPU goalkeeping AI. That's how he looked.
The phrase that they use in England is he was standing on his head. That means he was out of his mind.
Yeah.
Just playing.
Yeah, it's like even shots that you would never think like he would have gotten to, like he got to it. He kept the clean sheet. Carlos Small had a couple of opportunities, and like I said, he was able to get a hand on them. And then in the end, like I said, in the 82nd minute, they got scored on by Joel Wiki, and right after that, it seemed like it was the momentum just went to Las Vegas. Carlos Small continues to show a little bit of what he's capable of. He still has to continue to get back into complete match fitness like the rest of the guys. But you know, it's come to a point where I'm starting to get a little disappointed with Aldo Quintanilla. He's gone back to trying to take shots but skying them, or the shot's not going towards goal. And I think if you're going to be a striker that has shown with the Dynamo, granted it was against NTX Rayados, that you can score, then you've got to be at least capable of putting those shots towards the goal.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that confidence may play a factor in that, because now he's feeling the pressure from Carlos Small?
Not necessarily. I think it has a lot to do more with Wilmer Jr.
Okay.
Because he's the one that's been getting the starts.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, that's what I feel. It's been him and either Jordan Jones or sometimes Guillermo Delgado, more than anything Jordan Jones. And then coming from a player that has gone to the Dynamo, that was leading, the goal scoring tally for the Toros, and having to start on the bench. I mean, I think it kind of may have affected him a little, and we talked about it last time on Down in the Valley. And I'm not sure we touched upon it in Generation Orange, but how players like Chuy Enriquez, like even Wilmer Jr., Manny Padilla, who have been benched and they were doing good. Kai Green, coming from starting. We touched upon this with Carson. Haven't been starting, then all of a sudden being benched. With Chuy Enriquez, you had that, and he would say it lit up a fire in me, and to continue to prove to the coach that I deserve to be the starter.
Yeah.
And it just seems that the opposite has been true for Aldo, because he's been coming in, especially away. He's been coming in, and his shots have been with a lack of power or completely off mark. And so, hopefully, with Carlos Small, he either shows up, he pulls his big boy pants on and shows up and pulls his weight like he was in the beginning of the season, or granted, he's gonna fall from heaven to the heart on the ground in just a short amount of minutes. Why? And it goes back, and you talked about it when this whole discussion was going on with the Dynamo's not doing anything, or why are they release players? The mentality.
Yeah.
Are we starting to see that maybe Aldo Quintanilla, if he's not the number one, then he falters?
Yeah. And there are players that is, that's their mentality, that I'm good enough to be, the one in front, and if you're not going to have me there, I'm not going to put in the same amount of effort. And players who struggle to get the ball on frame, that are strikers, and they go from doing it on a consistent basis to suddenly not doing it on a consistent basis, one of two things has taken place. They've either had a loss of confidence, which that could be because he's a young player, or they're just not putting the same effort in because they're kind of frustrated. And, the second one, if he feels that way, he needs to take it up with coach. The first one, if he feels that way, if he's lost his confidence, he needs to take it up with coach and say, look, I'm not feeling as confident since you benched me, and let coach address it. Don't, the players need to have just as much accountability for themselves as, as the coaches do for their players. So I think it's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, that loss broke an undefeated streak. Undefeated. Yeah, because you guys hadn't lost a match in 6 matches, which is really incredible, to be honest. Considering
granted, most of them were at home.
Correct, but that still is something.
Yeah,
regardless,
it's
still
something.
Way better than you were having before.
To be fair, I guess you could say Castron Field is another baseball field, and so the conditions weren't that great, but they were better than for example, against Seattle Sounders 2, where it was a complete mess. It was decent. You could be able to play. Now, granted, that the atmosphere at Cashman Field is electric. I mean, the fans get on you. There's a lot of el que no salte es un toro, ya sabes qué, que este que el otro, you know. So there were the fans played their part with Las Vegas, and that's one of the things that Carson mentioned last week. He said Cashman Field, the fans have embraced this team, and will do anything to give their team the home advantage that it deserves. Forget the llamas, forget whatever. The fans, in such a short amount of time, have embraced this team as Las Vegas's soccer team.
Yeah, that's good.
And so now next week, this week actually, not next week, so this week, this Saturday, they are playing at Sacramento Republic at Papa Murphy's Field. Now, there's a couple of factors that are going to be very important, and we'll touch upon that more on Thursday. Number one, Sacramento Republic has been historically a good team in the USL. Number two, with the whole wildfire going on in California, we have no idea. And what I've seen from the Weather Channel, and what I've seen from pictures that are from the USL fans Facebook page, the air is bad. It is full of
really
a lot of
hazy and smoky,
hazy, ashy. And so that's going to be a huge factor with how the players are going to breathe, how they're going to be able to play such a high, a dynamic play.
The high intensity.
Yes, exactly. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And remember, Papa Murphy's Park is an outside. It's an outside stadium. It's an outdoor stadium.
Yeah,
so,
there's no roof.
Yes, so it's all going to play a factor. But like I said, we are going to be talking more in detail with Jacob on that on Thursday at 7 p.m. here on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel.
So note for listeners, that's Thursday. Tomorrow is U.S. Open Cup, so there's no Down in the Valley. Thursday is going to be Down in the Valley this week at 7 p.m. Central. You can watch it on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. Do yourself a favor if you have questions or are curious about the Toros. Like this video, subscribe to this channel so that when they go live, when they release stuff, you guys will get alerts. You get notifications on your phone, and you'll also get them on your desktop whenever they go live, whenever they start streaming. So, have you heard anything additional related to replacements for Bert Garcia? Anything going on related to Bert Garcia in terms of things that have changed since he left, any positions that people that have left recently with Bert or as a result of Bert leaving, people that have come in to replace those positions. Have you heard anything in regards to that you can speak about?
Basically, his position, the presidential position, has not been filled yet. From what I heard from, I believe Greg Luca mentioned it to us, of the staff, is that they might not make a decision until maybe like late in the season or in the off season. But however, Alonso Cantu, the owner, which by the way was confirmed that he is the only investor on this team. Alonso Cantu, as well as his daughter, are going to take a more hands-on approach to this team. They are starting to make, what I've been told was that they are going to invest a lot more money in TV advertising, in better TV advertising, and pretty much traditional advertising, ad boards, billboards, TV, radio advertising. They do feel as well that they have to do something to get the people involved.
Back into it.
Yeah, back into this. I saw some stats. By the way, thank you, Mike Pendleton. He always puts every week. He always puts the attendance numbers of USL, and from year-to-date average from this year compared to last year, we fell about. Yes, like about 50%. So like from 7,000, our average right now is like 4,000.
Yeah,
4,000.
50%.
So which is bad.
Yeah, it's a bad drop, But you know, fans also need to bear in mind, the few fans that there are left. No, I'm just kidding. Fans need to bear in mind that the team struggling is always going to produce less fans, no matter who you are. Look at the Dynamo, same type of thing. And now that the team is starting to produce better results on the pitch, I think that will slowly come back. It's going to take time. You lose fans from losing a lot faster than you gain fans from winning. And so I think that's going to take some time. It's going to be interesting to see as this whole situation with Cantu and his daughter kind of progresses, to see how they intend to manage, how they intend to move forward, what they want to do, what changes they want to make. You know, because there's a lot of options there. There's a lot of things that they can do. And, you know, the one thing they know they don't have control over is the team itself in terms of the technical side of it, in terms of the soccer side.
Yeah, we've talked about that many times.
Very heavily. But the stuff that they have control over, marketing and advertising and sales and ticket, game day experience, etc., those things are things they do have control over. Yeah. You know, different days, you know, special days like dog at the park type day, or, you know, I don't know what you guys call it down there, but pup at the park, something like that. You know, where
yeah,
you take your dog to the
bark at the park.
Bark at the park. You know, and these international matches, which I know Bert Garcia was bigger on the international matches.
The problem with Bert Garcia and these international matches, and that's what what I was told, will be one of the biggest difference in the way they're going to be handling this marketing. Now that Alonso Cantu is going to take a bigger, more control over it, yeah, is that Bert Garcia had this mentality of, I'm going to promote the stadium. Yeah. I'm going to promote the park. The team is second place to the stadium. I see why, because their investment is on the stadium.
Absolutely.
But the team, who is pretty much their main attraction,
it's the driving revenue.
Yeah, needed some attention. I mean, you need, like I said, more marketing. You need to get the team out there. You need to get these players out there to the fans, you know, out in the community, so that people get to know them. You know, I mean, I know the Dynamo's doing it when it comes to like meet the teams, yeah, or meet the players at specific events in Conroe and other
all around.
Yes,
Katy, Conroe,
exactly.
Cyprus.
And I have yet to see something in that extent with the Toros going to Mercedes, going to Alamo, going to Harlingen, going to Alamo, you know, or Mission. You know, we don't see that. It's all about, okay, it's all the week, it's training. Saturday, it's the game, and then Sunday, well, guess it's a day off. Not sure. Yeah. But they're so focused on, which is fine, focused on the field, but there has to be a way to make this work. That way, you can get these players out there and get the kids, get the adults to know these players, and you can have a more personal bond, a personal, you know, not friendship, but, you know, at least like, oh well, I'm gonna go support because, you know, this guy plays well, even if it is because of that, because Chuy Enriquez me cayó muy bien, like I'm gonna go see the team, you Absolutely. Know, but it has to happen.
I'm interested to see how Alonso Cantu and his daughter handle the international matches, because it was a big draw for the stadium. It was a big draw for the area in general, and I think that's important for the Toros if it's advertised right.
Well, this is you're probably gonna love this. So September 8th, Tigres versus Atlas.
I saw that already
at HEB Park.
Yeah.
6 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, right as the whistle blows, Toros versus Real Monarchs. Double header. Nice. At HEB Park.
Nice. See, that's the way you do that. It's interesting to me because these are things that we've talked about, the things that can be changed on your show repeatedly, things that you and I have discussed off air, on air, and to see those changes happening has to put a bit of a smile on your face, because it feels like either they've been listening to your show, listening to you.
Oh, you're giving me too much credit.
Or at least we knew what we were talking about to some extent, because what they're doing it will make an impact, but the fact that as business people they see these things as positive change is a good thing overall. And it's interesting too from a Dynamo perspective because we talk a lot on Twitter, those of us Dynamo fans, about how we tend to see the struggles with our front office in terms of marketing and advertising. It will be interesting to see if Alonso Cantu and his daughter are able to make it work in the Valley, if the Dynamo see that and maybe start to adopt some of those same principles, some of those same strategies, because they're struggling. The Dynamo are struggling to put butts in seats. The Dynamo are struggling to sell out the stadium match in, match out. The Dynamo are struggling to sell enough tickets. We had 14,350 or something like that in this last match. Before that, we had 13,000.
Right.
13,000. Yeah, that wasn't 14,000, but 13,000 according to for the Philly match. And you have to think about it. 13,000. What's remarkable about that number is there were less fans than that, but that was the lowest lowest ticket sales in Dynamo history since they moved to BBVA. They've not had a lower attendance at that stadium, and for MLS matches, that's excluding USOC. So that's really, really interesting to just see all the changes that are happening, to see the proactiveness of the front office there with the Toros, and to also see that the fan frustrations have not gone unnoticed, and that he's trying his best, and his daughter is trying her best to address those, but to address those in a way that still shows the respect to the Dynamo, still shows the respect to the technical staff and to the players that I feel like they deserve and they're owed. Now it's up to the players to repay that respect by putting it all on the line on the pitch, match in and match out. And so I hope that this is that corner that needed to be turned for the Toros to find that success on a consistent basis, and also for the fans to start coming out again, to know that their voice is heard, that they aren't just, as I said earlier in relation to the Dynamo, they're not just, their opinions aren't just being talked into the wind and then going away. There's someone listening, there are people listening, and their opinions do matter in the grand scheme of things. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean independence today. That doesn't mean independence tomorrow.
I did also hear that is pretty much in the back burner.
Good.
I feel like, from what I've been told, it's like they're willing to give the Dynamo. They're seeing some change.
Absolutely.
The Dynamo has handled this team, and so they're willing to kind of give it a more, give them a more trust in this process. I mean, and even if they don't, I mean, they kind of have to suck it up
for at least the duration of whatever the agreement is.
Yeah, because honestly, if it's just Alonso Cantu that's the investor, that's not enough.
Look, he's got money, but money is not the same as having the financial capabilities to pay not only players, but you're talking about paying technical staff, you're talking about paying stadium staff. I mean, all of these things have to come out of his bank account. And so, it's easy for us as fans to say, they should make these changes and we demand independence or, whatever it may be. But there are business ramifications to those things being done. And I think as fans, it's really important that we remember that these decisions have an impact, not just on today, but on the long term as well. Because I think a lot of times fans tend to have a very short-term view of things that are going on. With that being said, though, to kind of close up today's episode, I personally am still very frustrated with Chris Kennedy. Not because of the game day experience so much. I think they've done quite a bit to improve that, but I think that we're at a point where there's this interesting culture that's kind of come about, which is they're going to spend money in specific places and then not spend money in other places. I feel like they don't spend enough money on marketing. They don't spend enough money on sales. They don't spend enough money on front office staffing. And they're willing to bring in lower level talent at a lower price point so that they don't have to pay as much.
Yeah.
I feel like if they brought in better talent in the front office across the board, that this team would be far more successful than they are in bringing in fans. Some of the Twitter discussion today was about reaching out to U of H students. That's something that the team used to do under Oliver Luck on a consistent basis when they were at Robertson Stadium. But there's no reason, especially with the light rail that now reaches to U of H campus from the stadium, that there's no reason that they can't work out they can't at least go out to U of H every couple of months, talk to students that are out there, try to build up some rapport with those students, bring a couple players out there to hang out and kick the ball around with some students in the parking lot or whatever, just for fun. Right. And then sell cheap supporters season tickets, because those are the cheapest seats you can get. Those types of things are things that can be done, and they don't cost a lot of money. But the flip side of that is they could yield at least decent results. Now, Seth did come out and say, if you think about it, though, how much is that 15, 20, 30 tickets really going to amount overall from an income standpoint, from a revenue standpoint? And he's right. 15 to 20 tickets for one match, it's a few $1,000s. That doesn't add up. But that's a few $1,000s every match. And if you keep doing it and you do it consistently and you continue to see that same growth, then you're talking about exponential growth. Now you're talking about growth on growth on growth. And that's where you start to see the benefit, because now instead of just 30, you're talking about 60. Instead of 60, you're talking about 120. Instead of 120, you're talking about 240. As we get those numbers that grow, that's where you start to see the long-term benefit. And I feel like in some aspects, because of the budget limitations with this team and because of the financial limitations with the Dynamo, that the front office has to have, or feels that they have to have, a short-term mindset a lot of times, and they focus on short-term production. And a lot of times that means that the long-term production is not going to be there. And we see it in players like Elise and Kyoto. They're not here permanently, and they're probably not going to be here permanently. We see it in players like Cabezas. He's going to come in when he gets back healthy. He'll probably spend another 2 to 3 years here, and then he's going to go off to find another team somewhere else that's going to pay him more money. At the end of the day, we're not going to be a club that keeps the top-level players for very long, because we're going to look to sell them on. We're going to buy them cheap, sell them high. And so it's important for fans to remember that we don't have a lot of money to just throw at a big-name player. It's not something you can just whip out the checkbook and suddenly have those zeros appear on the check. It doesn't work like that. With that being said, also bear in mind that Dynamo has spent over $8 million this offseason and season total to bring in players or to keep players that would have otherwise gone away. Elise, Cabezas, Pena, and really we should add that Carlos Small too, because they paid for that process as well. So that's 4 players that have tremendous upside. Elise and Kyoto, we know their upside currently. Carlos Small, we're starting to see it a little bit with RGV, and Pena, he's what little bit I saw of him on Saturday, I liked. I thought everything that everybody said about how physical he was coming in, that definitely was on display. But just, I think it's important to bear that in mind, to remember that, to keep that in mind, and to not lose that focus that, yes, we can be critical of the front office, but we also need to understand that there are limitations there. And I'm by no means defending them, other than Matt Jordan, who I think, considering what he's had to work with, has done a fantastic job. Whether people agree with that or not, that's their opinion. But my biggest frustration is again, Chris Canetti is a different animal, and while he's a great person, I feel like his leadership of this team is focused on specific aspects that are no longer yielding the results that they were early. And some of that is, as Cisco just said in chat, the early and immediate success of the team hid the deficiencies in the front office, winning the 2 champions back-to-back. That also came about because Oliver Luck left shortly thereafter. And once Oliver left, a completely different regime took over. And Chris Canetti was no Oliver Luck, and he's never going to be Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck was a fan-first guy. Chris Canetti is more of a business-first guy. And so that mindset just, it operates differently. It has a different perception from the fan point of view. But the other thing I've always said too is, you have to remember, everybody who's watching and just fans in general, you have to remember that Chris Canetti's job is not actually to please us. Chris Canetti's job is to make money. If he's making money, Gabriel Brenner's not going to get rid of him. If he stops making money, or the stadium is no longer a viable option for this team, or this team is no longer viable, Brenner will make changes.
Now, how much, because as far as I read about Brenner, Is he really here in Houston most of the time? Because
he's about 50-50 or 60-40, 60-40. Most of his, a lot of his time is spent in Mexico City, 60%, 40% here. But that's still a reasonable amount.
Yeah, but like he doesn't see 100% like which.
No, but
like
at the same time,
he gets what his like the people who he has in
absolutely
charge.
correct.
That's what he gets, and so he's getting like, oh well, we're actually making revenue, we're making a profit with what's been going on. He's like, okay, well that's fine with me.
Absolutely, and that's about what I expect the conversations go. He looks at the financial statements and he says, okay, we're in the black, let's keep going.
Yes.
You know, that sort of thing. You know, but. You know, Callow said, you know, he made the point about, you know, look at the LA game, a big name from another team sold out our park. He's right, but here's the thing to keep in mind. We're talking 20,000 tickets. We're not talking, really it's not even that, we're talking 11,000 tickets roughly if we go, well, not even that, we're talking less than that. We're talking 10,000 tickets from the 14,000 mark, which again, lowest attendance was 13,000. So 13,000 to 22,000, that's 10,000 tickets, give or take roughly. 10,000 tickets at $20 is $200,000. That's not going to make or break a season. So this whole concept of we have to sell out our stadium, we have to remember our stadium's not the same size as some of these bigger stadiums. So the reason Atlanta can afford to have such low prices on their concessions is because they're selling 60,000 tickets a game. Because
What's that term called?
I don't know. Seth could tell me what it is. He's my financial guy. But, you know, it's just... I think there's a perspective issue, or perception and perspective issue, that our perspective makes it harder for us to understand why the front office operates the way they do. And the front office perception that has been given is that while they care, they're focused on the business. I think in reality, if Chris was to come on the show, he would say, no, I really do care about the fans and mean it. He wouldn't just be spitting fire out his backside. But I think the perception, because most fans want to see a big name player, it's just not going to happen for the Dynamo. It's not the way the Dynamo are going to operate, and it's not going to be the way they're going to operate until Brenner is gone. We can't control the ownership. We have a, you know, it's an honor and a privilege that we have a team here in Houston. It's not a right. We are not guaranteed the right of a professional soccer team.
Especially with a franchise.
Just because we're a top population city in the U.S. Consider we don't have a hockey team and we're one of the top population cities in the U.S. And there's a pretty big movement to get an NHL team. So just keep in mind that this could all be gone tomorrow. There's nothing in life, especially this, guaranteed to us. So while I'm not saying don't criticize them, I'm just saying let's keep the criticisms in check and make sure we're being respectful and mindful about it. You know, look, I want him to be out. I don't want Chris Canetti in charge of this team anymore because I think it's gotten stale. But at the same time, I think he has brought in Matt Jordan. He did bring in Wilmer Cabrera. And I think those were positive moves in the right direction. Now, is it the end-all, be-all? No. Has it totally panned out the way I would like? No. We made a deep run into the playoffs last year. Wilmer's had 2 years. A year and a half, if you think about it. He's not even had a full 2 years. This season has been a crapshoot because mostly of injuries. If Cabezas isn't injured the entire season, the season's completely different. So at the end of the day, we can be as totally frustrated as we want, and we can throw and make fits and be pissed off all we want, and that's good. That just shows you're passionate and you love the team. But we also need to remember that there are limitations. We need to remember that as much as we want them to go out and sign Chicharito, they're not going to go out and sign Chicharito. I, for one, don't want Chicharito. But it's just, we have to keep those things in mind. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget those things and put those things in the back of our mind while we're focused on being pissed off at the refs, being pissed off at coach, being pissed off at players, whatever it may be. I think we kind of tend to forget those things. So, man, I ranted for a really long time. I started the show with a rant and I ended the show with a rant. I'm on a roll tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's just a 2-hour show, 2 hours and 5 minutes, I guess. Yeah. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and being interactive and engaging this week. You guys are amazing. Michael, Cisco, Callow. I know I saw Riley in there. I've seen quite a few people in there. I appreciate you guys engaging in the chat, tuning in every week. We'll be back live again next week. Same time, same channel.
And once again, thank you, Upwards of Unknown, for subscribing to the channel. Yeah. And Blues Fan, thank you for that $1 tip. Yeah. Greatly appreciated. We'll see each other again next Tuesday for another episode of Generation Orange. Is there something you need to tell us about next week?
Jay Adelberg will be on next week. I don't remember who else I've lined up. You can share it. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
I don't remember. Like you like put me on the spot. I'm like,
yeah. So Jay Adelberg will be here. That one is confirmed.
Yeah. And I'm working on one other thing. I know I'm working on. I just don't know who it is.
Yeah. So that's gonna be what's gonna happen.
Before we go, Blues fan did ask who's going to USOC tomorrow. I am going. Edson's going as well, so we're both going. So there's your answer. Okay.
Probably not.
Yeah, it was Victor. I'm
Wasn't
going to reach out to Victor and get him on. Yeah, he's actually, no, I already reached out to him. He said he would come on. Thank you, Cisco. Yeah, so Victor Arisa next week will be on as well for at least a few minutes to talk Dynamo. And I think he brings an interesting perspective as well.
Yes.
And then, like I said, we're also going to have Jay Adelberg, who's another ticket rep that's very vocal on Twitter, come on and talk about the fan experience and some of the things that the front office is doing, the sales team is doing to try to address those things. So again, though, thanks for tuning in. This has been Generation Orange. As always, stay orangey and forever orange and Somos Toros and Dash TFON. Sorry we didn't get to Dash stuff. We'll get to it, I promise. Just not this week.
Take care.
Peace out.
Nobody said it'd be easy, but we took a train to the ceiling. And now I know my feelings. Nobody said it'd be easy. I found you in all of the madness. I heard your voice in the static. Your skin on my skin like a magnet. Nobody said it'd be easy. Nobody said it'd be easy. Nobody said it'd be easy, but we took a train to the ceiling. I'm alone with my feelings. Nobody said it'd be easy. I found you